the M4 chip and virtualization, investigating Microsoft, and mobile device management. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by our Patreon subscribers. Get access to the MacVoices Slack, the MacVoices Discord, MacVoices After Dark, and have your name listed at the end of each episode of MacVoices. Sign up at patreon.com/MacVoices. I'm curious to see what your reaction is to this one. The M4 Macs can't run virtual machines with older versions of macOS. And I believe it goes back to 13.1, I think. With 13.3 or earlier results in a black screen with the VM failing to boot. I don't use virtualization, and I definitely don't virtualize macOS, but that's me. So that's why I'm asking. How about you? Is this something that you see as a really big deal, or a big deal just for a certain subset of people?
I don't know if it's a big deal. I mean, I'm a Parallels user, so I mean, I've got older versions. More so, I play. But the fact of the matter is, I'm still running it on an M1. I have not tried this yet on the M4, which I'm intrigued to do that and put my license of Parallels on my M4 Mini to see what it does. But ultimately, with the virtual machines, the primary reason I want to do it is I still want to have a Windows version available to me, that I don't have to go to a Windows machine to look at something when there's something out there. So I've got Windows 11 running in virtual, but it's a 64-bit OS. That's it's the ARM based. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of people out there that are virtualizing because they want to be able to still continue to use older versions of macOS. At least you can go as far as Ventura. I've seen it go into, if you can't go past Ventura on an M1, because that's really what it started, because beyond that, you'd have to be on an Intel Mac for it to be able to work. So, but overall, I think, going all the way up to Sequoia, I mean, I've got all the OSs installed up to, all the way back to Ventura, and it's just a way of testing, because people are still using it, and it's still supported, so.
It's an issue for developers, because they, would like to do testing without having to have a room full of machines that are expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So it's disappointing for developers.
Okay.
Do we know if this is a bug or if this is an intentional move? Okay.
Jeff, that's it. There seems to be no identification of exactly why. So, in a week or two, we may have a story that, oh yes, we can virtualize, because it just seems like nobody has the answer to it. It's just what they know is that it doesn't work.
Right.
I did see one story that Howard Oakley, who tried to debug it a bit, and he said he thought it might require changes to the older operating systems, which Apple is unlikely to do.
Yeah, they won't.
Okay. Eric, Marty, you two work in university environments. Any impact that you would see in what you do? And I know that a lot of people do a lot of different things in the university environments, but for you two, any impact here?
No, I think at least in my environment, people are platform dependent. So either they're on Macs or they're most likely on PCs, and never do the twain meet in terms of academics using virtualization. I just don't see it.
For me, it's virtualization of Linux, not macOS.
Right.
Because it's wanting to run instances of software under Linux before you send it out to a pool of Linux boxes.
Yep.
So, I have to admit, I hadn't gotten around to doing the virtualization test, so I have some interest in it, but since I actually have a room full of machines, it hasn't been as high a priority.
Fair point. And I'm not trying to justify this or anything, but if that is that important to you, then just keep an older M4 machine around, and the virtualization should work fine.
Intel based.
Although, if what you're trying to do is to test an installer or test some sequence of like joining an MDM or something like that, you want to be able to reset the operating system and try it again, and reset it and try it again. And you might do it, 50 times a day. That you don't want to have to fully reinstall the software. You want to be able to just snap back and then rerun it again. So having it virtualized is potentially easier.
Yeah,
good point.
You could have an M1 machine and run a VM on that.
True.
Yeah. So just, Eric, take your room phone machines and just start virtualizing the daylights out of everything and see what happens. There'll be this huge sucking sound coming from the computer lab.
Is it hot in here?
Yeah.
No, that's just you.
Oh, okay. You have to start wearing earphones.
So I don't usually vote or root for FTC investigations. This is one I can get behind. Microsoft may face FTC investigation over Azure. Dear FTC, please investigate Microsoft for something. Please.
Don't mention the T word.
Well, I will mention the T word because
Azure doesn't start with the T.
No, but Teams does. Teams does, and they go hat in hand. And today's Tuesday. I've had 3 Teams calls this week. Not one of them had no problems. Today, I had one where right in the middle of a conversation, Teams decided that my MacBook Pro didn't have any speakers anymore. And I couldn't get it. I could not get audio out. I had to restart everything. So anyway, apparently Google accused Microsoft of some anti-competitive practices, trying to lock people in, big money trying to get out. So, it is what it is. It'll be interesting to see what happens here, and especially with the change in the presidential administration coming up. Lena Khan has I'm quoting the article. Lena Khan has made a point of probing big tech. Whether that'll be on the agenda for the new administration or not, it'll be very interesting to see. But I'm rooting for it. Anybody else want to share anything on that?
Looking at some of the specs, some of the details in this, it makes sense to be doing some sort of, at least a probe. With the costs that the companies are paying to have their business Azure accounts, and then being locked in with like super high exit fees, and if they consider leaving, seeing cost increases on top of that. So you get penalized if you're thinking about leaving Azure. So it makes sense that there should be at least a probe.
And Jeff, I want to try to be as serious as possible about this. There are times I don't have a problem with Microsoft leveraging their strengths any more than I have a problem with Apple leveraging their strengths. Mm-hmm. Where it starts to bother me is when some of those strengths are oversold or they don't work. And it feels like they have pushed something out hard, and that's half baked, maybe not ready, but just because they're Microsoft, they can push something out that is less than feature complete, and buggy, and people still buy into it, and then they start squeezing out competition.
Well, Apple is notorious for releasing products that are half-baked. But yeah, I suppose the difference here is they're not then trying to push other people out of that market with their half-baked product.
right, through less than above board means. I mean, yeah, if their half-baked product can't compete with something, then, if I choose to buy Apple's half-baked product, that's fine. But
Well,
here,
okay, let's take one of Apple's half-baked products, iCloud.
okay,
And
okay,
and the comparison that I'm picking out of this article would be like if you have an iCloud account and you're storing a bunch of files on iCloud, but then you get Dropbox. And so you start using that instead, and Apple finds out, and then there's a man in black with rainbow colored shoes that shows up at your door and says, "Here, you're looking at Dropbox. That'd be an awful shame if there's an unexpected price increase on iCloud, now wouldn't it?" And now you've been intimidated out of using another service because you don't want to have to pay more for iCloud. And I'm assuming based or the scenario I just crafted, the elements of it, of course, the rainbow shoes wouldn't happen, but this isn't something that would really happen. But it feels like it would be in the same vein as what Microsoft is doing.
if they did that.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the claim that's being investigated is that companies are having to pay more for Azure once they start looking at competing services.
Right.
So if you don't look, your rates aren't going to go up. But if you do, well, break out a second credit card.
Yeah. Webb, did you have something you wanted to say?
My parents taught me if I don't have anything nice to say, I shouldn't say anything at all. That's how I feel about Teams. I don't have anything nice to say about it. I've had some of the same problems that you alluded to with some of the audio routing and going to. I wear a Shox Bluetooth headset at the office sometimes, and sometimes it finds it, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the audio quality works, sometimes it doesn't. I just go Teams.
Yeah.
You mean go away, Teams.
Go away, Teams.
Okay, go away, Teams. Yeah.
Well, it already does that.
Remember, I told you that I still think that my IT head has been plied with alcohol and strippers.
Mhm.
That's all I'm going to say.
Mm.
From our Microsoft rep, of course.
Yes.
Oh, I didn't say that, did I?
No, I sure didn't hear it.
Hear what?
Say what?
Marty, you want to jump on the bandwagon? Or you just want to let it go?
No, I'm okay with this, and it's kind of an irony at the university I work at. We're Microsoft focused, but all the faculty I know, when it comes to having meetings with students, they use Zoom instead of Teams. But every time we have an administrative meeting, we're all called into a 30 or 40 member meeting on Teams, and there's always problems with it. So I think the university can't, what they do is they threaten not to support us, meaning they won't give us technical support if we're using Zoom. We don't need technical support if we're using Zoom.
Yeah,
it works.
exactly.
And so go ahead, threaten you're going to take away our technical support. And, they kind of look the other way when everybody's using a different product.
Well, we're in the same boat. We don't allow licenses for Zoom except for certain people. So that ends that unless you want to have a 25-minute meeting for free.
Yeah, well, most of the faculty I know just have their own accounts.
Yeah. And, I know somebody's going to write in here and saying we're being really hard on Microsoft and especially on Teams, but everything that we've said here is legit because it's honest, because these are our personal experiences. It's not we heard that somebody had a terrible experience. No, I've had it personally. And it sounds like some of the other panel members have. So it's, and hopefully we are balanced when we have negative Apple experiences too, that we mention some of those if and when we have them. It just seems like this one seems to be so prevalent and so frequent that it bears a little discussion.
Agreed.
Eric?
Shouldn't take a
Sorry.
sip and then try and talk.
Yes. Sorry, I caught you.
It's always a challenge when the main product design feature is that they can wipe all of your data remotely for everything tied to your product. And I think it's just really difficult to get a stable product when that is the goal. And that seems, for a lot of people, that's why they have Teams. That's why they have the Microsoft products, because you can snap your fingers and have everything on the machine vaporized. And, so you don't have to worry about what happened to all the information. But it makes it harder to share data, harder to move it around. And I think sometimes makes the products like Teams just simply difficult to keep running consistently, because everything has to be in its own container and secured from everything else. And it's a difficult feature to deliver and have everything work.
Erica, I'm going to ask you to elaborate just a little bit on that. I haven't heard that explained that way before. And maybe you and David have, some can take us a little bit farther. But when you say one of the primary reasons or design features is that it can delete data, are we talking about for rogue employees? Are we talking about for employees that have left? Are we talking about for machines that have been misappropriated?
Yeah, machines that have been lost, or if you want to leave a company. I mean, normally you're supposed to hand the machine back in, but say it doesn't come back in, you turn off the device and say, yep, the user is no longer involved. And even if you own your phone and you bring it into work, all of the stuff that's tied to work is in a separate container on your machine. And as soon as you're not working anymore, then it all goes away. And then there's no worry about having company data continuing to wander around with somebody who doesn't work for the company, or a lost laptop won't have that data anymore. So it's a safety feature, but it's complicated to deliver that safety feature.
Got it. Marty?
Just I can't Enterprise on Mac do that also?
Absolutely.
I say that just because watching Reddit and reading Reddit, somebody always posts a picture of a locked Enterprise computer that they bought cheap off eBay. And they're like, can I do anything about this?
Nope.
And it's like, nope.
Macs, the best thing about Macs is with Apple Business Manager, and there's enterprise versions and the small business version, is the fact of the matter is the machine is locked to that company. So when you set up an account with Apple and you have your machines set up in the purchasing plan, when you purchase them, those laptops are completely directly logged to that company. So if you were to get that Mac is basically a brick. Because what will happen is if you want to reformat the drive and boot it back up, it's still going to say, whoop, nope, this is for the X company, and it's going to start setting up based on what X company has set up using MDM. In many cases, it's using Jamp. Other cases, it's doing other types of MVM. But that's one of the more positive things on a Mac versus a PC. PCs use Autopilot, so you have Autopilot as another tool that Microsoft uses I'm starting to just now dabble into that as we've been looking at that. So, but Apple's system by far is, I think, foolproof, because that Mac is a brick. It cannot be formatted no matter what you do, because it's assigned to that company. The company has to go into their portal and say, hey, this machine is no longer being used, especially when they retire them, to get it out of there and remove it. So then when it's shipped to be recycled or resold, then they can't use it. So
is that in firmware, Dave, or is that part of the operating system that even if you reformat a drive, can't touch?
It's part of the MDM. I mean, that starts with Apple Business Manager. Apple Business Manager encodes it based on that. And once, because as you always see, Macs always have to authenticate based on going on the internet to make sure they authenticate the device. Is it a legit device? Is it you've seen that before. I'm sure many of us have when we've reformatted macOS, that it's going out to the internet and sees, oh, yep, this belongs to this company, and then it's going to start kicking in the rules that the company has set up with within Apple Business Manager, and that's how it's locked down.
It's tied to the serial number.
It's the serial number, right?
Okay. Cletus says you could change the MAC address. He's just thinking out loud. Doesn't help.
Serial number. Serial number is
Okay.
the hard-coded number that you can never disable. But
So is it possible for the company to say, okay, I'm ready to sell this because the employee's leaving and I want to let them use the machine? They can do it, turn it off, so then it doesn't.
right. They go into Apple
Okay.
Business Manager and then
Mm-hmm.
deprovision the device out of the business's Apple Business Manager account, and then once that's done, then it's a free and clear machine. Most companies are going to do it with older devices. Some companies let employees take machines, others do not. Some that want to just recycle them and be safe. You never know where those machines are going to go, and it's also a lot of overhead selling or giving laptops to employees once you retire them. So, but that has to be done before it's ever given, if it's ever turned in.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.